Donald D and Brother B was in a big MC battle. Donald D won the battle and he got the trophy. After that, they got in the limousine and they were going to the after party.
Daddy, please don't go. Tell me another story.
Alicia, I don't have time for another story, but we can sing that song that you like.
Okay. Live show, party, yo, if you love it, pop, put your hands up. When I say hey, you say ho, hey.
Hey, live show, party, yo, if you love hip hop, put your hands up.
I say hey, you say ho, hey, hey. Yo, everything I drop is automatic, certified hot, genuine hip hop. It moves like stocks on Wall Street. Ain't no MC hotter than me, man. Forget the sound scan, forget that your label gave you them brands. I be at your show, take the mic from your hand and serve you right in front of your fans. No, I don't play the okie doke. Yo, you can take a toke from your smoke. No, I'm not a washed rapper that's broke.
Good evening, welcome everyone to our show. As always, we are now on episode 7, so don't forget to subscribe and like. The next generation of Mangrove 9. We have some special guests today, all the way from the Bronx, the Bronx, yeah, right? So it's like London,
Yeah.
Bronx, yeah. So all the Bronx people in the house, make some noise. Whoop, 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 whoop.
Yeah.
And we also got the UK, obviously, the Londoners, as we do. It's a London thing too, right? So we are the next generation of the Mangrove 9. So here, myself, Yinka Innes Charles, and
hey, JamilaBolton-Gordan.
And we're going to take you on a journey. Okay, so part 1 is going to all be all about the Bronx and the US, New York, and about how hip hop originated, started, and then we're going to take part 2 into the UK version. So today we have some special guests, as I said. We have Donald D and Jimmie Jazz Jones. So privileged to have you guys on the show. And we're going to start off with Donald D in the house. So Donald,
Yes.
Would you like to introduce yourself?
Well, it's Donald D from the Bronx, NYC, South Bronx. Out here from the way back, man, my start in hip hop, the early days, Assalam Brothers, Funk Machine, B-Boys, all the way to the West Coast. So Donald D is in the place to be, as you can see.
Okay, so that's Donald D. You heard his version, but we'll elaborate on that a bit more. And next up, we're going to have Jimmie Jazz Jones in the house. Would you like to tell us a bit about yourself, Jimmie?
Oh, yeah, sure. All right. I mean, a lot of people may be aware of me from the show Graffitti Rock. I was the disc jockey, DJ, scratch artist, however you want to label it, on the actual show. 1984 with Run DMC, KoolMoeDee, SpecialK, Shannon, the New York City Breakers, hosted by Michael Hollman. And, a little further back than that, I kind of basically started out with the whole Zulu Nation thing, because I'm from Bronx River Projects, of course. Yeah. And, a lot of people are aware of that as well. But that sort of like was my introduction into hip hop, because basically the culture actually started in Bronx River Projects as opposed to just the music itself. Because in terms of the music, it was like, I always tell people pretty much that Kool Herc ignited the culture. DJ Kool Herc, he ignited the culture. Grandmaster Flash was the showman. He was the showman of hip hop. He was like the flamboyant. He just made everybody want to engage, because it just looked so like, oh my God, what is this guy doing? And then, of course, there's Africa Bambaataa, and he brought a whole, like putting all of the elements together and taking different parts of what was going on during that period in terms of the graffiti, the dancing, the rapping, and of course the DJing, and then a little bit of like, how to broaden what was happening in our little small community of the Bronx. So the creativity came from having nothing. Okay. We basically had nothing, and we needed something because hip hop came out of the gang culture. And, a lot of our older, relatives and people, you know, that came up before us were involved in that pretty much because I was born in 65. So of course I wasn't in a gang, you know, because the gangs were big, I would say pretty much from the early 60s to the early 70s. So when hip hop started, which it was coined in 1973, modern day hip hop, because of course you know, it's all debatable about rapping happening back in the 60s with James Brown and other artists, Pig Meat and different ones. But I always categorize it as modern day hip hop,
Okay.
which originated in 73.
Mr. Matulu in the
Yes,
house
yes.
from the
What's
UK.
going on, family? What's going on? Straight from London. Matuli here. Creative. I just like saying creative. Do you get what I'm saying? I don't give any sort of, you know, linear labeling type of occupation of what I do, but I'm just within the arts. Do you get what I'm saying? Whether that's poetry, writing music, acting, I'm there. Do you get what I'm saying? Actorist as well. Do you get what I'm saying? I like saying actorist and activist, putting them together. Do you get me? Doing the work I can do within the African community. Have a very strong interest and involvement within the Pan-African community. DTA, decolonizing the archive, research assistant. So yeah, I'm just trying to thing. And right now, I'm just very gassed to be here. Cause I'm with some serious legends. Like these, I've seen the birth of hip hop. You know, all the way from the Bronx, where the hip hop mecca is at. We got them here on this panel. So right now, I'm just gassed to really hear what's going on, because at the end of the day, music is the newest creative outlet that I've immersed myself in.
You put it out there, innit? You can express yourself.
And also, it's a creativity that is much needed. And historically, when you're talking about 35,000 years ago, we've always had some form of beat or some form of drum to communicate. So rhythmically, you know, we're with the universe. So how just before we go into this, it was interesting. I said to my son before I came into the meeting, I said to him, "Do you know the history of hip hop?" And he looked at me, first of all, very confident for a second, and he went, "No."
A lot of the young kids don't know the history of hip hop. I can tell you that, especially in the
Put
UK.
them on the spot.
So the first question is, why did you choose to go into this industry, and what inspired you?
Now we'll go to Donald, and then first we'll go back to Donald. Can you hear us, Donald?
Yeah, I hear you loud and clear. It's kind of cool. Jamila got this glow over her head that looks like the sun.
Sun rays.
Like sun rays, yeah. That's cool.
I'm hiding in a room for my children.
Okay, that's interesting. Well, I got into this culture by just being an observer at first, going to watch Kool Herc parties, basically. And then that trickled down to watching Disco King Mario, who was one of the unsung heroes of this hip hop culture. So as an observer, I was just going to the parties on the outside of the rope, watching these brothers throw down. So how my journey started in it, as kids, we used to go to this place called the Boys Club. And this place was a place that kept us off the streets, to have a place that was positive, like as Jimmie said. In the inner cities of the Bronx at that time, it was really devastating, abandoned buildings and trash, pimps, everything you name it, it was there. So we found a peaceful setting in the Boys Club where we can go swimming, play basketball, and just have fun among the kids in the community. So I wind up having a friend named Adrian Harris, who was better known as Easy AD, who became a member of the Cold Crush Brothers.
Okay.
So we were on the basketball team together. And so basically, to get into the Boys Club, you had to have a membership card. And there was a guy who sat at the front door, and he would check off your number on a piece of paper, but then he would have a big boombox playing break beats. One day he asked me and Adrian, do we know how to MC? And we told him, yeah. But we really had no clue, because we told him, yeah, and he invited us to his house, and he started cutting up breaks, and we would rhyme. And basically, at that time, I didn't really have rhymes. It was just basically clap your hands to the beat, throw your hands in the air. Kind of what I heard at Kool Herc. Went to a Disco King, Mario, float like a butterfly, sting like a bee. I got more rhymes than Muhammad Ali. So I used to say his rhymes at our parties or at our rehearsals. So that was basically my first introduction into the hip hop, which it wasn't even called hip hop at that time. It was just, what was it, a jam?
What year was that? What year was that?
That has to be 70, late 77, going into 78.
Okay.
Yeah.
Or it could be 78.
You know what is bizarre? I can't my recollection of when the label came into play, but it's always attributed to Keith Cowboy from the Furious Five, coining the term. So whenever that was, he gets the credit. I mean, you know, overall, he seems to get the credit for coining it hip hop.
Yeah.
Now that, I mean, I'm assuming if everyone is agreeing, I guess that's, you know, whatever date that was.
But the thing is, he coined it hip hop, but Bambaataa structured everything of all the elements into this umbrella of hip hop. Everything was in the circle of that, what Keith Cowboy said on the mic that night.
Mm-hmm.
So when did you actually decide to write lyrics, Donald, and say, you know, I'm an MC and I'm confident?
Okay. So like I said, I heard Busy B rhyming on the microphone. And what happened at that party, it was at a park called 123 Park. A friend of mine's named Andre Harris, who played basketball with me, he played at a high school called Stevenson High School. So the jam was not far from where he grew up in. So back then, we used to have the little local stores called the bodegas. So when I heard Busy B saying these rhymes, I ran from the jam to the store and asked the guy for a paper bag and a pencil. And I kind of wrote down everything Busy B said on the mic. And then when we had our jam with the Asalam brothers, we did it in this abandoned building. So if you saw the movie Beach Street, when they did those jams, the Us Girls, and it was in a building where nobody lived in. So we was doing a jam in this building, and because the apartments were very small, we had the equipment set up in one room and the people dancing in another. So basically, we were in the back room and I was rhyming Busy B lyrics off the paper, but nobody seen me doing it.
This is where the truth comes out, when people tell it themselves.
Right.
No one needs to know.
But then a guy came back to the other room and said, "You are saying Busy B rhymes."
So you get caught.
So I got called out from that.
By the way, so called biting.
Biting,
that was
right. Fit someone's lyrics, man.
But I'm just saying, that's what it was.
But the thing is that when I used to hear the cassette tapes, sometimes I would hear Lovebug Starsky say the same thing that Busy B was saying on the tape. That I would hear.
Let's keep it real, yeah.
What that they're saying it. So I heard many other MCs saying the same rhyme, so I thought it was not an issue. But then when I got called out on it, I went home and started writing my first rhymes. And the first rhyme I ever wrote was called it went dip, dies, recreate. There's not an MC that I imitate. Got my own style, my own rhymes to show that I can rock your mind. I'm not telling a tale or a fantasy. I'm just Donald D from the top of the key. When I shoot the ball through the net, put your money on the table and place your bet. If you win, if you lose or you win, don't forget you can do it again. So party people get in the groove as I rap to the beat. I do it smooth. Because the microphone to rock, the money I got from the bottom of the sea to the World Trade top. I'm a rhyme designer, the women finder, the virgin breaker, the money maker. Yes, Sean. You don't stop.
So you hit the first show, first ever
That's the
rhyme
first
that
rhyme
you
I
wrote
ever
on
wrote.
our show, the next generation of Mangrove. So Jimmie, so what was the question? Do you remember the question that Jamila asked? How did you get into
the industry?
When did you start DJing? What made you want to be a DJ?
Oh, I remember very vividly. It was because you know, in where I'm from, of course, is known as the Mecca of the culture. Yeah, of the actual culture. Not where it started, of course. That was
South
the Kool
Bronx,
Herc.
right?
Yeah, all in the South. Well, Herc actually wasn't in South Bronx, but we were.
Okay.
We're known as the
West.
Southeast Bronx.
Okay.
Bronx River, the Soundview area. That's pretty much Southeast. So, for me, for example, my first introduction was seeing a gentleman by the name of DJ Tyrone the Mixologist. Kool DJD was his brother, who was this like very well-known club DJ, but he still wanted to sort of cater to the younger crowd that weren't old enough to go to these discos, because they were discos at the time. They weren't like hip hop. There was no such thing as a hip hop club at that time. So we're talking about in the 70s, like the mid 70s. So Kool D happened to be one of the local DJs, and he played at various other venues in Manhattan. You know, that's where, you know, they call money making Manhattan, where all the people with money hang out and stuff like that, where the rich people, you know, quote unquote. So they were doing a jam with Afrika Bambaataa, because in the early days, Afrika Bambaataa didn't really have a sound system established yet, his own sound system. He already had ideals, and he had, you know, I would say bits and pieces of, you know, equipment to sort of like showcase what he wanted to do. But he brought in some people, you know, who specialized in sound systems, and Kool DJD happened to be one of them. So one summer, this was the summer of '77, I was 11 years old. They were doing a jam in Bronx River Houses, and I was out there, you know, riding my bike, just like as what I would always do as a kid, just be out there playing baseball or whatever, or riding my bike. Of the projects we had several parks within the projects. I think there's like 3 parks in Bronx River Project. 3 actual parks. One is called the Big Park, and there's 2 smaller parks. So where the community center is, this was in the summer. So they had the jam. We would have the jams outside. Well, I say we, but they would have the jams outside. Because I was a kid, but I say we because we all participated in it.
Yeah.
Anyway, Bambaataa was out there with Kool DJD and Tyrone the Mixologist. So I'm riding my bike, and I hear this bizarre like sound, and it was going zip, 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 zip. That's the actual scratching he was doing. So I stopped. I'm like, what is that? It was just the weirdest thing, because it was just sound so futuristic or whatever at the time. Just mind you, I'm 11 years old, 77. So it's like this kid hearing something out of Star Wars. And prior to that, I had heard jams happening, you know, briefly, but I wasn't really interested in it until I heard that specific sound. So the scratching thing intrigued me. I went over, and I was like, what is this guy doing? He was literally pivoting the record back and forth with this sound going zit, 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 zit. Then go to the other side, do it with the other hand, then over back again. I was like, what is that? And I'm like bewildered. I'm an 11-year-old kid. I have to remind you guys, I was 11 years old. So I'm very bewildered by what was happening, but it sounds so cool. It was the coolest. I just thought it was so innovating to hear someone doing something that first of all, I didn't know it was actually, you could actually pivot a record back and forth without it being scratched or whatever. I just didn't, I couldn't imagine that being possible. So I said, I said, I'm going upstairs. I said, I'm gonna try it. So I'm this little kid, I go upstairs, I pull out one of my parents' albums, and I put it on their plastic Fisher turntable or whatever, one of the plastic turntables from the 70s or whatever. So I think it was a James Brown album, and I went zip, 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 zip. I was like, I got it. I think I got it. I was like, I want to be a DJ. And then that's how it started for me. I saw that, went upstairs, gave it a go. It worked out, and I was like, I could do this.
Fisher Price.
Yeah, it was one of those Fisher Price old, you remember the old plastic turntables our parents used to have, you know. Even at 11 years old, I was like, I could do this. So then, of course, I worked on getting another turntable, and my parents, I would have to sneak and use it while, you know, my parents were at work. I would sneak and use it. I got another turntable, connected, and I bought this really cheap mixer for, I think, about $50. And I started doing it. I was using their albums, of course, because I didn't have any. I was just doing it because I was
That's
just
where it
really
came from. Jimmie, you say using their albums because you didn't have any, but that's where all the music came from. Our parents.
Yeah.
Yeah,
parents.
they're rare grooves and revivals that we were taking to make great beats.
So what was great? What was so great about the fact that my mother's collection and my stepfather and my mother's collection, their collection was pretty much it varied in like, because my mother loved, classic folk music.
Okay. Yeah.
My mother was into a lot of stuff, but especially because the first group that made her start really loving music was the Beatles. And that's how ironic, because it was a UK group. But my mother was so intrigued by the Beatles as a teenage girl. That was her thing. It was like,
it's funny because my dad used to do music, and he used to go to the studios talking about the Beatles in Abbey Road.
The what?
My dad used to go to the Beatles studios and do set jams in Abbey Road in London, because he was a musician.
Okay. So she started collecting music, of course, and she, of course, all of the Aretha Franklins, the Supremes, and all of that old Motown and the good soul stuff that we all got accustomed to and still love to this day. But again, back to my thing, I was scratching and sort of I just got really inspired by it all, because what was happening that day, I didn't really focus on the rap, because I don't remember if anyone was even rapping that day. I'm pretty sure they were, but that wasn't what sparked my interest. What sparked my interest, what was going on behind those decks, the turntables and the scratching thing. And it started from there, and it kind of I just really sort of immersed myself into it. Then started Donald, here's a point you made about how I did the whole emulating different people, like with you with the rapping and the copying, whatever. Well, me, it was Jazzy Jay. He's a very well-known, respected DJ. Everyone knows him all over the world.
Yeah,
he was one of the original founders of Def Jam Records. He's from Bronx with the Projects. He lived in the building right next to me. Oh, well, his parents,
and
of
he was
course.
down with me.
Yeah.
Jazzy Jay, DJ Jazzy Jay. And Jazzy Jay's had countless hit records. In fact, he made one of the most probably iconic songs of the time of 1983 when It's Yours. The song is yours. I'm not sure if you're familiar with it.
Say 1983.
Yeah,
Rock.
1983. So there's a whole backstory behind that as well, how that label got started, because it originally wasn't Def Jam. If you kind of dig into the history, the original label was called Party Time Records. But once Jazzy Jay and Rick Rubin and Russell Simmons severed ties for whatever reason, there's a lot of stuff behind it that none of us are really, don't have all of the details to. Jazzy Jay, of course, could express or explain how that, the fallout of that.
But there's a lot of controversy.
Party Time Records and it turning into Def Jam Records, how that all transpired. I don't know. But I do know this. Jazzy Jay was a big part of my, love for the art form of scratching, because at that time, we didn't call ourselves scratch artists. We just called ourselves DJs, just like any other DJ. But, as time went on and as the art form grew and progressed, then it had its own label, the scratch artist or the turntablists or whatever. We didn't, I don't even remember that term in the 80s. I mean, I think I did hear it maybe in 88 at the end of the 80s, turntablists. I'm like, turntablists? What the hell is that? And it was like, that's a scratch artist.
That started during when they started doing the DMC and new music
started in, I
that.
believe, 86. I think the first one was 86, and I believe the 85 or 86. But I remember the first winner being a guy from Jersey, because they talk about him all the time, DJ Cheese. And I didn't participate in any of that stuff, because by that time, that started, I'm already 20 years old in 86. I'm 20 years old. I'm already an adult in my eyes. So to me, what they were doing in terms of the competition, and I think that actually started in UK as well, the DMC competition thing. I
Yeah,
believe
because I mean, we
UK.
had even down to, I mean, I know that
Yeah, from the 80s
say
onwards, yeah.
that it happens wherever, you know, there's things stemmed in the Bronx. But we can say in the UK, you know, we had rappers that were also rapping and releasing tracks from like I think 1980, and then we had someone called Dizzy Heights, and then there was Nutriment, I think, in '83, and then we had Eric B, which I'm sure everybody knew of as well. So somehow it was happening in the UK as well as happening in the Bronx, if you get what I'm saying. We'll have to take that to you, Donald, because Jimmie's.
Well, I mean, I know how it got to the, because if you take from it starting in New York, and then how the first place that it got to in the European market was the UK. And I know from, you know, the Wild Style played a big part of it. And also our radio show, the Zulu Beat, because a lot of people were getting those tapes that we were doing and making its way into the UK market, as well as the world famous Supreme Team show. Tapes was also in the UK market. So when it comes to hip hop, it's America and then UK, and then it kind of went all over Europe from there. Because UK was the one that was licensing our music from back in the day.
And I sort of think the films have a part to play in it. So you've got an array of media that kind of transcends from America, you know, to us in England. So we will watch your style, the way you look, the way you dress, what kind of music you're playing in the background of those films, or you know, when you're dance. That breakdown. You know, we all thought we could do it. That was it, man. We were in heaven. And then we started having more days as well. So we had the DJs coming through. Then we started to have that kind of connection, physical connection, where we'd have a lot of the artists coming over, hip hop artists coming over. And then, you know, various areas of London. So you'd have South London, it'd be Brixton. Then you'd have, you know, all days in.
West Sides, we had a Tabernacle and places. I remember Grandmaster Flash and all them people coming down in the early days, man. With I just remember seeing them all dressed in this outfit, thinking, "What the hell was that?" I see them rapping, and they had these big furry clothing, and it was just different.
It's unusual, very unusual, very Afrocentric, but also unusual.
I just remember looking at them walking. I was like.
But you know what? That fashion, it was not a normal fashion that we all dressed
I know,
in New York. But once they became entertainers of making records, you kind of they kind of followed the code of Parliament, the Barcades, the Isley Brothers, the way those guys dressed on stage. Flash and the Furious, as well as Bam and the SoulSonic kind of took that look and then brought it. But then, as you see, not everybody was dressing like that. When it came to performing, Curtis Blow didn't dress like that. You had some with leather, like say the Treacherous 3 would wear it. Then later on, Run DMC adapted some of the styles that we were rocking in the Bronx. Like I was one of the MC that was rocking the leather blazer and the hats that Running them made famous.
The Kangos.
That was our style in the Bronx. But you know, we all had our own style, but like you said, it kind of did to the outside world. It kind of looked crazy. Like if you saw Beach Street, you would think like, yo.
No, but it worked though, because you kind of, when you saw like Grandmaster Flash, that you was just like, you know what, you're brave. And that's what I like. People liked about it, that they could just put on anything, and then it doesn't matter. They're gonna get up there, do their thing, start to rap and do whatever, and you're just like, And I think the ladies kind of liked it as well. I think the ladies still liked it. We kind of intrigued by these men that can dress like that, but they're so brave. And then when they started to get up there and do their thing, you're just like,
And also they're articulate. I mean, the thing is that you can articulate your
because you're a man, you don't understand.
It look weird, but you know what I can say, and I this is me personally. I'm not gonna make assumptions about what I'm just. My belief is, to have those guys dressed that way, because our culture, that wasn't not at all how we dressed or anything at the earlier jams and stuff, like it was just bizarre to me. I thought it was a cross between, like he said, Donald said, Parliament and the Village People or whatever.
Yeah, I remember the Village People.
Yeah, it was bizarre.
But Jazz, you got to remember, in the early days, we were all poor kids and parents that had money, so we wore what we wore.
Yeah.
You know, you gotta, but when you look at like Bam and them wearing that stuff, this is when they had hit records and became entertainers, and they had to separate themselves.
Yeah. So, but you know what? Also,
they were dressing.
But this is another thing too, Donald. A lot of people tend to not really want to, you know, see it for what it was. But white mainstream America, and I'm being very honest about this, white mainstream America didn't want to see like this sort of, like, they didn't want to project what was really going on with our look.
Yeah.
And I mean our look and what we were wearing, because it was too intimidating to middle America. You know, the sort of look we had at that time, whether it was the Kangos or whatever, it just, to soften it up a bit, I think the labels more or less promoted that look as opposed to what happened years later with Run DMC. Then it was like a breath of fresh air when they came along, because we said, that's us. We looking at Run DMC. That's why they were so, it wasn't just that they were original. I mean, I'm gonna say original in terms of, like, you know, how they put their routines together. Because to this day, they're one of my favorite groups. And I love the way they put it all together, you know, the outfits, the presentation, whatever, the look and everything. But it was more relatable to us kids that came up in the 70s when we were little kids. We saw these guys, like I said, with the Parliament look, and that just didn't fly for someone like me, because I mean, when I saw Beat Street, the film, I was like, what is this? I hate to say it, but I was like, we didn't dress like that. It just the authenticity of that film didn't align with how we came up. It just,
what about Wild Style? Wild Style. So
Wild Style was more accurate.
But you related to that, yeah?
Yeah, because the accuracy of what was depicted in that film was what it was, how we really were. That's just the bottom line. And people could, you know,
but
say,
also
hey,
a big part,
go ahead,
Jimmie, that plays is with Flash and them all coming over to Europe and touring. The punk rock scene played a big part into the fashion that got back to America, with all the leather and the spikes played a big part, because they saw how the punk rockers dressed and they kind of brought that look to the scene. Because that's, if you go back to the Roxy era, we all was rocking those leather and the spikes around the wrists and the boots and everything. So the punk rock scene played a big major part in the fashion change also.
And of course, and of course, you know, in all honesty, it did, you know, warm middle America up to what hip hop was, without coming across as, you know, exactly. There you go. Perfect word. Because it didn't, you know, number one, as Black males, we're always being looked at as, like, you know, threatening. So to have the non-threatening look, that's what it was. The non-threatening look helped, you know, bring the culture to the masses.
Now you're talking about the cultures and the scenes and the, you know, the kind of films. I'm going to direct a question, because now we're going to take it to another question. And the next question would be like, so you're talking about the scenes now. So I want to take you to, I don't know, so Donald, I'm going to try and entwine this. So as far as I'm aware, you started out probably late 70s, is that right? And then you went into the 80s, and then you started working when you formed B-Boys, is that correct?
Yeah, but before that, I mean, my story starts with, I mean, how from starting with the Aslam brothers, then meeting Africa Islam became a big part of me moving up that hip hop ladder.
Mm.
And by me meeting him and joining his group, it brought me into the Zulu Nation.
Mm.
So it becomes steps from that. So from the Zulu Nation, we're doing all of these jams as the group called the Funk Machine.
Mm.
And from that, once hip hop left the inner city and made its way into Manhattan, because you got to remember at that time, disco was really big. And we could not afford, well, one, we were too young to get into the discos. We didn't have the clothes and we couldn't pay to get in.
Mm.
So once the Roxy's and a few other clubs down there, Dance Interior, and what's the other one, Jazz? Nigril, is that it?
Yeah, Nigril.
Yeah, so all of those kind of intertwine and us making our way into the Manhattan scene. So during that time of the Roxy years is when we had a radio show called the Zulu Beat. And from that radio show is how the B-Boys thing come about.
I'm trying to entwine you, see, because I know that Jazz,
Oh
Jimmie
yeah.
and the Graffiti Rock.
What and who entered when, so that the younger generation have a full understanding
Right.
Yeah.
of how, both your paths have come.
How you kind of entwined. How you
Entwined,
eventually got to know each other.
So for me, I was around more of the Rocksteady crew because because of one of being in the Roxys and they were around, but also when we had the radio show, they used to come down and hang out with us. It would be Frosty Freeze or Ken Swift, even Crazy Legs, Fable, Doe. So they would always be at the radio station hanging out with us, or we'll do an interview with them. So for me, that was my connection with the B-Boys. And with Jazz, I guess it would go back to him with the TV show.
Graffiti Rock.
When you was intertwined with them.
You talking about mainstream breakdancers or original pioneer breakdancers?
Well, that's what you need to tell us, isn't it? I know with Rocksteady Crew, where you're calling them mainstream. I don't know. Rocksteady Crew came to the UK.
No, he's going even further back.
Oh, you're going further back. Okay.
Yeah, because you guys.
We're your students.
Okay.
Oh, because well, let me just give you a little sort of just quick history on that whole thing. By the time the Rocksteady and groups like the Rocksteady and New York City Breakers and various other breakdancing groups,
they're more the second generation.
Yeah, exactly. Because prior to that, there were a lot of unsung breakdancers that were very, instrumental in the culture. Of course, they didn't, because again, and I'm gonna bring this is a point that I had made with the DJing thing. Once I hit 20 years old, that whole scratching thing was not really relevant and, going further with the career. My mind was more focused on, okay, what do I do now in terms of like in the nightlife and production and stuff like that, maybe even going in production and stuff, because my mind was already shifting, getting out of to what the scratching thing. That's why it was weird when it happened and it took off, but it was just so old to me at that time when the DMC thing started, which the scratching artist competition started in '86. Again, I said by that time I'm 20 years old, and I started doing this at 11.
So how did you get into in '84? So let's go back to '84. So how did you get into Graffiti Rock? How did you get involved with Michael Hollman, and how did you get on the show?
What happened with that was the one of the venues that Donald touched on, the Roxy, because the Roxy, a quick history with the Roxy. The Roxy's opened its door to hip hop in 1982. That was the first year, because prior to that, which he mentioned, the other venue, Nigril, that place gave hip hop its life downtown with the mainstream. Just in plain English, the rich white folks. That's what it was. It gave hip hop life down there at the Nigril. Then it went to, because what happened at the Nigril, I believe it was a promoter at the time, Lady Blue or something like that. Miss Lady Blue, they
I
called her.
I can tell that story.
She's actually British. She's British. She's a
Is she?
British lady.
She's from
Okay,
London.
British. Whoa, 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 whoa.
Yeah, well, you know what? You have to give her props because she was very instrumental in bringing the hip hop to the next level.
Lady Blue.
And the next level is like mainstream, which she was a big part of.
Which
She was a big part of.
I can hit more on that.
Donald, you give
Donald.
her more because I'm pretty sure you know, even I met her and briefly didn't really get to talk to her much in the Roxy.
I still work with her to this day.
Oh, okay.
I still work with Lady Blue.
All right, so there you go.
So I can tell you, all right. So
tell us who Lady Blue is then. I mean, her
Yeah.
music or DJ or what aspect?
no, she was more
promoter.
of a, she was an organizer, promoter. So
Yeah.
how the whole scene starts
Okay.
all right, so if you look at the history of hip hop, the first to really make the elements to make his way into the downtown scene was the graffiti artists. They started taking their art off the trains and now putting it in exhibits, painting on canvases. So who was one of the big players in graffiti was Fab Five Freddy. He was doing his thing and he was like down in the Midtown scene. So he meets Kool Lady Blue and they were the first kind of like merging, bringing the hip hop to that scene, the Nigril, Dance Interior, and then the Roxy. The Roxy was a roller rink.
Yes.
And when she started bringing hip hop down there, she brought Africa Bambaataa, and then Bambaataa was bringing the Rocksteady crew. Then they brought some of the MCs, whether it was the SoulSonic Force, the Funky 4+1, and so on. So Kool Lady Blue is from London, and she played a big part in taking hip hop from the inner cities into the downtown scene.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, we'll have to
So
give
where
her a
did
prop
so
for
when
that.
did you where we're gonna try and entwine this now? So where did you take when did you not start? That Jimmie, your kind of big shot or thing was with Graffiti Rock, yeah. And then
okay,
when did
so
you
what happened?
Because you kind of took us to a level where you started, but you haven't. When was your first chance or big time to say that you went into the business?
Okay, so it all started.
Okay,
You're talking about who? For me? For Jimmie or me?
For you, Donald. Because Jimmie took us there. I want you to take up because you just told us you wrote your first song.
Okay.
When was your first big hit when you said, you know what, I'm in?
Okay, so basically it starts with, I'm starting to see some of my friends making records, whether it was the Furious Five and them making records and then SoulSonic making Planet Rock. So I remember the graffiti artist Phase 2 had made a record called At the Roxy's. And I asked him one night at the Roxy's, how did you make this record? And he told me about a record company called Celluloid Records. He was like, yo, you have to check with them. But he was like, the best person to talk to is Grandmaster DST. And if y'all know who he is, one of the most incredible DJs, who also was a great B-boy at one time.
Mm.
So basically, DST told me they had a schedule where they could not fit me in their schedule to make a record. But at that same time, I'm doing the Zulu Beat radio show with Africa Islam. And on this radio show, I'm rhyming live over Islam cutting up breakbeats. So all of New York can hear me saying rhymes every week on the radio. So the owner of Ventertainment Records heard me, and he came down to the radio station one night and asked me, did I want to make a record? So when he told me that, I told him, okay, let me go speak with Africa Islam, because I assumed he wanted me and Africa Islam to record together. But then he had told me, nah, he had this idea of a group called the B-Boys, and he had this DJ named Chuck Chillout.
Yeah.
So when I explained this to Africa Islam, Islam was saying, yo, go make the record, and when you make the record, bring it back to the radio station and I will play it. So he was all with me going to start my recording career. So from there, I went in and we recorded 2-3 Break, Rock the House, and Cuttin' Herbie was my first journey into the industry of calling myself a recording artist.
That record was a major, it was a major influence on rappers to come afterwards, like Donald's song, because they even used it in in dance
So many
music.
records.
Yeah, it's been sampled in so various types of up tempo music, pop, even in like in rave music, techno. You got Rock the House, y'all. That's Donald's voice.
My voice is in a lot of things.
If you hear
Do
that,
y'all guys know? Do y'all know Double D and Steinsky from
remember,
England?
you know the music, Donald? Not to cut you off, but I didn't mean to cut Donald off, but I just wanted to state it so MC Reason could get an idea and all the other people on the panel. The CNC Factory is used Donald's voice, and those guys were out the charts worldwide. CNC Factory, the one where you hear that part. All you got to do is when at the part where they said "Rock the House," y'all. That's Donald.
Rock the house, yeah.
Of course, everybody knows CNC Factory. So that yes. So that gives you what was that big song they did? Sweat.
Which one?
I'm gonna make Sweat. And that's Donald's voice sampled in it, but that just gives you an idea of the influence his song B-Boy Records or B-Boy Break or whatever. I can't remember the title, but the influence that particular song,
Records.
On Vintertainment Records, the influence that song had on the next generation of rappers coming up, because Donald did that in what, 83?
Yeah, and plus those records was big in the UK. They were very big in the UK.
Yeah, they used it a lot over there.
What was that? Was that in the 80s? That's the 80s and 90s, isn't it? 80s?
No, 83.
1983, I made my first recording.
Oh, yeah,
that takes us nicely into Jimmie with 84 when we're talking about Graffitti Rock.
Yeah, I'm the following
KoolMoeDee, you got Run DMC, and all those people that were featuring on that show, Graffitti Rock, and that was in 84, right?
Yeah, 84. Yeah, what happened was how I became, a part of the show was I happened to be spinning at the Roxy's, and it was a band by whichever it was, whether it was a Friday or Saturday. I know it was a weekend night, and he had me spinning with him, and because he would have various DJs, because in the Zulu Nation roster of DJs, DST was one of them. Jazzy Jay, of course. All of these names are very cemented in the industry in the early days of hip hop as innovators. Everybody from DST to Jazzy Jay to Africa Islam. I keep forgetting because you know what, Islam's name always slips in my mind because you guys went west, and the whole East thing that was still going on, even though it was a little later. But once Donald and Islam and those guys went west, they basically started a whole branch of what was going on over here in the East, and just everything that you hear from that came out of the West, all of the NWAs and all of those groups, the Syndicate, of course, came out of the Syndicate, in my estimation.
There's a Rhyme Syndicate, isn't it? Donald, you was part of the Rhyme Syndicate.
Yeah, it was part of the Rhyme Syndicate. Yeah. And all of those groups were an extension of the Rhyme Syndicate.
Yeah.
And of course, the Rhyme Syndicate was the extension of Africa Bambaataa, Zulu Nation, and what was happening with us in the early days, in the community centers and the park jams and all that stuff. But anyway, going back to me with getting the show, getting that shot to be, featured on the show. Michael Hollman was in there. He was up in the DJ booth because the DJ booth was very elaborate. It was nice. It was just this big circular podium. I
think we'll show some of the footage for that on the show to the viewers after, and some of Donald's.
As Donald said, it was a roller skating rink. So the DJ was right in the middle of the dance floor. I mean, the roller rink floor on a podium. So I just remember being on that podium, and it was just, and the capacity of the Roxy was something like 1,800 people, maybe 2,000, close to 2,000. But there were nights when it would literally be over 3,000 people in that place. and that's and it was like for a kid or anyone DJing, it was like you felt like you were DJing at a concert. That's what it felt like. I'm like this 16-year-old kid, and I remember the first record I played. Well, this is when I was 16. You know, of course, Graffitti Rock was 84, so
18.
fast
He
forward.
was 18.
But here's some little history of my whole connection with that. The first record he gave me to play, to scratch, was Zap, More Bounce, the song More Bounce by the group Zap. Yeah, it was part of the
Roger.
Yeah, Roger.
I met him
Troutman.
in 1993. I met him in Alex.
Yeah, that guy, he was
I was
amazing.
performing with who was on the show? He was on the show. South Central Cartel. Black Moon was there. That's why I met Smith and Wesson. Steel.
Yeah, I saw those photographs.
1993, they came to the UK, and I was doing a competition.
I saw the photographs. Those
I
were
came
nice.
second
Really cool.
in the competition. So, and he came up to me and he said, "You know what? The only reason I made you come second is because you're female." And I was like, "You're out of order, mate." But they were cool. They just started, and I think their manager.
Who was that?
That was in '93 with is it Buck? Well, their manager was some young guy. I just remember, and they just started.
Yeah, Drew Hop.
Yeah,
Drew
yeah.
Hop.
She's probably big to you now, but I was, little young, and yeah. So I met them.
Yeah, his name was Drew Hop.
And Roger, he was also on Alexandra Palace doing the little concert there. But Smith and Wesson and South Central Cartel and Black Moon.
Yeah, I remember the photographs because you posted, the photographs of that. Yeah. I guess.
Who knows that when I remember them staying somewhere in King's Cross, and they were staying in some little hotel. They weren't nothing too big then, and who would ever known that they blew up so big after?
That's how it usually happens. Especially when you're dealing with talented people, you may just kind of see them in passing or like at some smaller venue doing something. I'm pretty sure Donald has probably countless stories about NWA and all of those guys became superstars.
You're big stars though. That's right.
Also, guys. Donald knows
connected
guys.
With y'all talking about Black Moon and Smith and Wesson. They had another group called the Original Gun Clappers.
Okay.
And they redid my song "Girls" from the B-Boys, called "Girls 1993." So I had some run-ins with what's his name, Drew Ha, whatever his name.
Manager,
He was running. Yeah. So small world in the hip hop community.
It is.
And what was it like working with people like Ice-T and there was quite a few of them. I just remember, the album cover. We, in terms of imagination, what you can get away with back in the days. We were blown away by album covers.
That was
from Earth, Wind & Fire right down to Ice-T, which is a complete contrast, but it was good.
Right, but. If you go back, who was like some of the first Black artists to put like women on their cover? If you go back and look at the Ohio Players albums cover.
That's right.
They would have women with no clothes on. They would have their hair was cut like yours.
Absolutely right.
It would be just like that, real pretty. So they was doing it. So in the beginning, when Ice was doing the Power album, they was basically going to get a model to do it. But then he was like, man, look, my girlfriend is just as pretty as any model. And Darlene was all with it. But if we rewind, and I could tell you how the connection with me and Ice-T started. So basically in '85, Africa Islam was going back and forth to California DJing. And in '85, he had an extra ticket and he asked me, did I want to go? And I was like, yeah, because I had never been to Los Angeles. And I went. And then from there, then I meet Ice-T and I go on the scene. But I didn't realize that I was a well-known artist in California because of the songs I did with the B-Boys.
Yeah, B-Boy records. I mean, B-Breaks.
But Jazz, you got to remember at that time, the record companies ain't telling us our music is in the...
Right.
We didn't know our music was in the UK.
Yeah.
That was a way of them not having to pay us. So I meet Ice-T and... Right, so that's when I officially met him was in '85. And then 87, Africa Islam officially moved to LA, but he still had his apartment in the Bronx. So So I used to go by his apartment, stay there sometime, just watch it and maintain it. And in 1987, that was the year that when Scott LaRock got killed from Boogie Down Production. And Scott was good friends with me, Karis One, and basically Ice-T and Islam was calling to find out the situation with Scott. So when I told them what happened during that conversation, Ice-T told me about the idea to start Rhyme Syndicate and merge like the West Coast and East Coast. So during that conversation was when he mentioned it, and then '88, I officially moved out to LA. And from '88 until the 2000s, we were doing music, touring the planet and having fun.
Because you also crossed with, well, obviously, because Hijack was also part of, came working with Ice-T. So how did that come about, working with Hijack as well? Because obviously Hijack, for those out there who don't know, is UK.
So that's basically with Ice-T being over in the UK. So basically, all right, '88, Ice-T came to the UK. He was touring, and then he was on Tim Westwood's show.
Yeah, Tim Westwood.
All
the Americans were always on Tim Westwood's show. What about the UK? Yeah, he was always playing them. Actually, he used to play some of my tracks. So I ain't gonna say anything, but he did have the habit of always supporting the UK, the Americans more than the UK. So a lot of UK artists, there's a bit of controversy in the way he played.
Yeah, how he did it. And you know what's funny? So basically, Ice was on his show and Hijack heard, and they went down to the station and they met. And Ice loved what they were doing, and that's how they became part of our Rhyme Syndicate family. But when you say that Tim always embraced the American artist, it is funny because we in America was embracing some of your early UK artists, whether it was the Cookie Crew, the Wee Papa Girls. What's the brother that passed away? Was it Derek B?
Derek B, yeah. And Moni Love. And Moni Love.
And then Moni, because Moni originally started with us with Rhyme Syndicate. And then she left and she wanted to go to the East Coast, and then she got with the native tongue. So Moni was originally with us. So we always had that bridge with the UK and America. You had Arthur Baker, who was working with a lot of.
I actually talking about Arthur Baker. He done some production on some tracks that I done back in the days.
Really?
Yeah.
That's cool. Yeah. So,
it's like all these names are coming. I'm like, oh, I worked with people like that too. You don't even realize yourself. Like you said, when you're young, you're just working with these people. You don't know how big they are within the industry because you're just young and you're just going from here to there.
And then you got Nina Cherry was working with Africa Islam. He was like her official show DJ.
Yeah, she came out like
there
later.
was always that connection with the UK, and America.
I mean, what's interesting and what is a common denominator through all of this is the record industry. It doesn't matter what element you're in terms of what type of music you are into. What's interesting is the common thread of control over the artist, lack of understanding about the business side of the industry. Signing away your copyright, signing away, your
publishing, all of that,
your royalties,
all of that, the royalties, everything.
Signing your life away.
Sometimes I hindered myself where I wouldn't sign nothing.
Because
so copyright control, and then I'd never end up recuperating the royalties. So
now that you're saying that, because I wasn't aware of that, but now that you're saying that, it kind of makes sense, because I had asked you, I was like, what happened? Why did things not go further with what you were doing? Because you were great. And I heard you, I watched that video several times. I was like, I didn't see any reason why you couldn't have crossed over into the US and had a huge amount of success. But
in some ways, sometimes back then there was there's a lot of politics. There's a lot of politics in the UK. In the UK, and in the UK as well. There was a lot of blocking. also going on where if you was maybe a bit of a competition to someone that was already kind of big, and they knew that you was going to be a bit of a challenge, they would kind of block you, like so that you couldn't really get out anywhere. And it all kind of, also the West London, like the West Side, seemed to get blocked a lot in hip hop. Like for some reason, it's like in South London or that we'd always get a lot more promotion. And for some reason, the artists, which we'll be featuring on our part 2 show, because I think that's something to go into. So a lot of the artists who came from West London, I found that we kind of, for some reason, there was quite a lot of blocking where for some reason, a lot of the artists, some of them did make it out, but a lot of them didn't, and they were just as good. So. Yeah, to answer that.
But the other problem with music in this country, and this is again general, is everything starts off underground, fine. But when it comes to any form of soul, neo soul, rare groove, reggae artists, hip hop, it doesn't matter what the genre is. It's just, unless you are commercial, it's just not happening. And the thing is, the kind of record stations that the radio stations that we have are predominantly white. You know, we had a few underground radio stations, but they systematically in the 80s got shut down. Every single one of them was. So our music wasn't really, we didn't have an outlet for our music. Oh, wow. So the only people that we had were people like Tim Westwood, but because Tim Westwood is white, he had a lot of
279. Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of people that did get out, and as we know, they did make it over to America and get big, like you said, like the Cookie Coo Hijack, and then you got Duke and people. So there were MCG. There were quite a lot of people that did break out across the board.
Yeah, but we didn't have no sustainability.
Yeah,
because there was no support. In the industry for us.
But going back to that, Jimmie, because that tune was made in 1990, but I made tunes before that, because my first ever track was in 1988, and probably for 87. So I was rapping from about 86, and I was rhyming Reason before, and that was like, my first track was about 87, 88. Then I worked on Hardcore Volume with MC Mello and D to the K, Sparky, and all them lot. We did the first, I think it was one of the first ever hip hop hardcore albums that was in '88, which is in the UK. I went out on with Moody Boys, Tony Falk. But then after that, I done loads of things. To be honest, not in the UK so much, because I was touring around the world in Japan, working with different artists. So I've done quite a few things. In '93, I was working with some American kind of UK artists. So I've done quite a few things, but not necessarily across, for some reason, America. I made it to other places like Japan. I met Q-Tip on Tribe Called Quest when I was on the roads in Japan.
That record could have been a hit over here, though. That was
blocked. That tune was definitely blocked. I have a conspiracy theory about it, but I'm not going to go into it, because
that could have been,
because that tune made it on the video, and in them days, video footage was very rare, right?
Yeah.
In the UK, anyway, for hip hop. There was a competition New Raps Generation competition, and it was like all different artists and posses and jingles. And if you won the competition, you got to make that video. And there was a big broadcast that was supposed to go out. Everyone was there, from Demon Boys going back there to Sparky. I don't know if you met her. There was, I think every person or crew was in the Dingles at that day. It was a big thing called the UK Rap Generation. I just start naming people. But so I won that competition somehow. Don't ask me. I won it. Even that Jonesy D, everybody was there. Like, who was
you were very capable. That song. That's why I was like,
I was supposed to go out. There was a big broadcast. I was compared with another artist, and then all of a sudden they pulled it. And I was like, wow, like they pulled it from it didn't go out, and I was just like, oh. So I still carried on. I was making tunes all over the place, touring around the world in Japan. Even when I went commercial, I ain't gonna lie, done some commercial tracks, toured around the world, made a little change. And I'm still making tunes, you know? So to me, it's like, okay, I didn't make it in America, but I was still making tunes and putting out songs.
And you know what? You might have You might have saved yourself a trip to hell and back because
no, I went for hell and back in the music industry.
coming over here, you
all
got
did.
caught up in the the glitz and glamour of it all back then. It was a nightmare for some people, but see, I was always luckily one of those guys that, stayed away from the negative side of it, the outside influences, because, when you're in the spotlight, what happens is you have everybody trying to be part of your little circle. And of course, what comes with that is like people trying to offer you drugs.
I know what you mean. I was offered everything possible. And not even just that, as a female, you got every man trying to,
Of course. As a man too.
I'm a producer. I'm a photographer. I'm this. And especially those young girls who are a bit naive. I wasn't.
Well, can I just ask, sorry to cut you all in. How do you feel, and Matulu, it's the same thing. How do you feel the state of British hip hop in general is? Because you look at, I lost interest a little while ago. It's a bit like boxing, once Mike Tyson went, the heavyweights when, it wasn't palatable. There's no excitement. There's nothing generating no interest.
Yeah, I hear you.
And the same with hip hop. When it got too commercial, it got very watered down, and then it got very sexualized. And then you had that was in the 90s and then the 2000s, and it kind of lost its way quite a lot, because then you knew that the influence of the record industry is more to not to be like Nas and a few others where they were conscious. The consciousness kind of left. It flew out the window for a while.
They took away the consciousness. They didn't want artists to think.
To educate
They wanted to dumb it down.
They didn't want them.
But that happened way back in '92.
To be almost a slave to the industry, like robotic. You go out there, you do what you got to do, you make my money for me, and then you go off somewhere and you disappear. It was quite disheartening to see the last 10 years where hip hop is at. How do you feel about
right now? Right now, for me, I can't even name one female rapper that does not take off her clothes.
Yeah, explicit.
All of them that's rapping barely wears anything now.
You know what?
Latifah and Yo-Yo and them. It's like you have to do this in order to be seen and be successful now.
When you had someone like who was very successful, and look at the amount of albums she sold, but it was too positive, was Lauryn Hill. Lauryn Hill was the last of the, real MCs that it was about the message. It wasn't about, I gotta take off my clothes. And Lauryn Hill would never do none of that. And it was every song she ever made was so powerful and impactful it crossed all boundaries and all nationalities. Lauryn Hill is so beloved because of her presence, as a woman, her strength, and everything. It's just she exuded the whole what a female MC. What she is the epitome in my book, the epitome of what a female MC should be and aspire to be like.
My favorite female artist, or one of them, is McLyte for me. And I know you had the work with Donald D and McLyte, the youngsters. I just loved her flow and style. For me, McLyte is one of the best MCs. I know
I'm sure McLyte. I'm McLyte. I'm sure Lauryn Hill was inspired by.
Lauryn Hill was. Lauryn Hill's up here, but Lauryn Hill was kind of different as well in that she brought so many flavors and flows.
Lauryn Hill incorporated the not just the rap, but the singing ability.
Yeah, that's what she done. She brought everything to the table.
She also put that spin on it. I would say something like what she got from her in-laws, the Marley family. She put that spin on it, that thing Bob Marley had. That sort of the roots of it came from it comes from here.
Yeah.
You can't make that up. That
Yeah.
stuff that comes from the roots.
Yeah.
And she incorporated that in her music. So that's why it resonated with so many people, because it's a class by herself.
Yeah.
She's in
Jazz,
a
let me
class.
ask you, why do you think she made it through? Like, why do you think she was able to just navigate through the industry with such
Yeah,
conscious
it's true.
presence, and she didn't get rescinded at all?
Exactly.
I believe one of the things that really was, had a major, like, sort of, point that kept her away from the sharks. I call them the sharks. The people that would try to dictate the direction her music should go in.
Mm.
Those people weren't able to get their clutches and claws on her because of her in-laws. She comes from a dynasty. I mean, the people that once she married Bob Marley's son and sort of had this sort of like spiritual awakening,
yeah.
if you want to call it that. It took her into another realm of music. And that realm, like I said, it transcended everything, under the sun. It was just because one of my favorite albums is her
Miseducation.
that acoustic album. It's where
Oh,
she's
yeah.
doing. You got to listen to that album.
Yeah,
That
the live
album-
one. Yeah.
Yeah. But we got the live one. Yeah.
I just said acoustics because she's singing with nothing but acoustics, and she just does it so. But it pierces the soul.
Mm.
It's not like you're listening for the beat
But
or whatever.
But also, I think also with her though, before she got to the Marley family, she was in a group,
That's
and
what I was gonna say.
Wycliffe
That was
was-
the point I was gonna make.
Yeah, Wycliffe was
Right.
her.
The point I was gonna make.
And Wyclef in his own right is a
And his
very
energy.
deep sort of spiritual guy with
Yeah.
his approach to music.
And his
It's not
Haitian
just-
background.
Can I say, well, her being in the group and having success with the Fugees played a big part.
Yeah.
If she was a new artist coming out, she probably wouldn't have did the Miseducation because they wouldn't have gave her that direction. Because you have to understand, at that same time she's doing that album, Little Kim is around. Little Kim kind of took the shift to the women taking off the clothes. Because you had some women dressing
And Foxy.
sexy, whether it was Salt and Pepper in them, but they didn't do it in the way that Little Kim took it to where Foxy Brown took it to where the women of today has taken it.
Yeah.
But Lauren, she kept it, and she had messages in her music because at that time, still there were some of the groups that were still doing that style. Quest was still around. There was a few artists that it wasn't totally, well, you talking about where the trap scene didn't exist at that moment. And you had Biggie that was there. You had, Craig Patton and all of these guys. So it started to shift to that player style of music. And if you look at it, it was more of the direction of what Bad Boy was doing in Def Jam.
Yeah.
Those were the two companies that kind of shifted the whole scene to where the women was rapping more about sex and taking off less.
Well, that also comes with Snoop Dogg. I mean, that comes later on as well. Once you kind of start getting even more commercial to a certain extent, you find that how women are perceived, and it's a shame now because I look at the current artists, the so-called current artists. I mean, there's a thing that Aretha Franklin, it made me laugh. She was saying that in order to be respected, you don't have to take your clothes off. Your voice or your presence will project everything. It's not about what you're wearing. It's about how you want to be perceived, how deep you are, how deep your message is. And they went straight back to Nicki Minaj and said, "Oh, have you got a comment?" And how they like to be mischievous.
Also, what else played a big part? Look at the videos. Look at how the women took off all their clothes in the music video. Played a very, very big part. Not only just the female artists,
I
it
want to
was
ask.
the women in the video.
I want
And
to
then the
ask.
last kind of person for that, oh sorry, Matulu, you know, it was funny. It was in terms of looking quite tomboyish or looking quite how I used to look as well.
That's how we, in
Is,
our days, we used to be like tomboy, like, you know,
yeah,
big baggy trousers.
and
You might show a bit
yeah,
of your stomach, just the stomach tone, to a little back there, and you'd have a little top to just show a little, just a tease. And you'd have your big
Like what,
boots on at the bottom.
how TLC used to dress.
TLC,
Yeah,
Salt and
yeah.
Pepper,
And
all
you
of
put your
that kind
boots
of.
on so you could kick them. You know, it's like
Aaliyah,
that was the image.
Aaliyah was another one who, you know, the
Yeah,
very
Aaliyah.
tomboyish look.
Yeah, I used to
Um,
be
and-
tomboyish.
Yeah, and
Still
then you
kind of am.
find, yeah, I think we all still are. And you know, it's quite not just Aaliyah. Who's the other person I was thinking of? Just in terms of style, you had not Aaliyah, who's the other
Brandy,
one? Yeah,
Brandy,
Brandy.
and Monica, and
Yeah, and you had
you
the
know,
kind of more
oh,
feminine. They were
Ed
more feminine kind of groups like SWB and all them lot.
yeah, Maya.
Yeah, I
You
mean,
had
Yeah.
a few.
you had a few, but what the point is, whether it's R&B or it's to do with hip hop, how we were dressing at that point,
Yeah.
late 80s, 90s, made it, you know, I think it was the last kind of sporty look. Even MC Hammer, as much as he's so commercial, it was commercial then, even the way they were dressed in those videos, you know, women still look like women.
Yeah.
Yeah, no,
It shifted,
I wanted to ask the brothers on what use lot's opinion is of the scene right now, because from New York, the city, and London here, drill is popping. You know, and there's a very drill
This is
music.
the younger ones we're talking now, right?
This is the current generation right
Yeah.
now. You know,
What is it called?
there's a heavy Brooklyn scene going on right now. I'm pretty sure you lot would be aware of it. Do you get what I'm saying? Like, also you had Pop Smoke coming from there. R.I.P.
Yeah.
You had 5 Year Foreign there. You have a little TJ. Do you get what I'm saying? You have all these New York rappers that are up and coming right now, and they're all drill. Drill is what's going on right now. You know, and
In London?
in London,
No, he's
and
saying
New
in
York,
America.
and New York as well.
Oh,
New York City as
I-
well. Like, in fact, they're very intertwined. They're very in contact with one another. You know, like you have a lot of UK producers that are making the beats for the New York artists that are rapping. You know,
Yeah.
so there's a strong network going on overseas. But I just wanted to see like what's useless opinion of it
About
right
the
now.
new style drill.
About the
and
new style.
trap.
You lot have seen the genesis, and now this is where we are currently. I just wanted to see what you lot think of it right now.
For me, New York artists has lost their identity. We were always the trendsetters, but now New York has followed what the South was doing.
Yeah,
You have
everybody
all New York rappers sounding like they're from the South. No one sounds like they're from New York anymore. As for the music, it all sounds the same. If they're all rapping over trap. So like you said, you got New York MCs rapping over UK producers. But in today's generation, it's easy to make music because most of these producers buy sample pack. It's not hard to just get
Yeah,
music
true.
that's already made. If it has bass lines, drums, and keyboards and guitars, and all you doing is copying it into your software, into your DWA, and putting it there. You don't have to do much to it. Where we had to be creative.
work
I still
hard,
got my
yeah.
SP1200 and drum machines behind me right there, where you have to think and be creative. Now you could go on any of these sites and just buy sample packs or download them for free, and then you call yourself a producer.
Yeah.
So for me, some of the music is good because I DJ out here at weddings, and some of the weddings and I DJ at clubs. I gotta cater to some of this generation because most of the people in the club are young. So I gotta play whether if it's Travis Scott or Lil Wayne or whoever's the hottest artist that's out set because I look at everything evolves. I may not like it, but everything evolves. Rappers don't sound like how we sounded back in the early days of just yes, yes, y'all, throw your hands in the air. Each generation, it has progressed, but has it progressed lyrically now? Nope. I think they watered it down really a lot to where it's more about the melodies. Every rapper is rapping with auto tunes now to help them sing. You know, I think it's much easier that an artist can make a hit record just from the comforts of their bedroom. As long as you have a computer to pay your dues journey anymore.
Yeah, it's
You
quite
don't have to
easy. It's a
go-
bit lazy, which is right, which is what I was going to say, ask you anyway, as well, is like, can you imagine if back in the days when everyone was just hard grafting, practically, you know, you had to work damn hard, even just to sound different, because if you sound the same as someone, they would call you, like, say that you're biting, whatever.
Yeah.
You had to be trying to be so distinctive. And in the early days, as UK artists, a lot of us sound American. So we can't say that we tried to sound American, and people had an issue with that. But then my argument always was, well, when people do reggae music, they sound like Jamaican. So why is there such a big deal about us putting on the American twang, even though I lost it?
Right.
As time went on, I got rid of that American accent, but that's how I started. But anyway, right?
Well, you know what?
Can you imagine now, though, just what I was saying, just go back to what Johnny said, if then we had social media like they have now, how big artists we could have blown up. Like, do you imagine how big, you think how big they are now? Imagine how big we would have been had that social media they have now.
Hold on. Let me just say one thing with the comparison with the UK rappers versus American. You know what it is with Americans and not like, having some of the UK rappers over here and becoming household names is because for some reason Americans don't believe that you guys deal with the same nonsense we deal with over here. And what I mean by that,
but the thing is, some of them do in a different way.
I know, but I'm talking about the industry doesn't believe it's going to sell. But the same struggles people rap about here are going on over there and various other places in the world. Yeah. But for some reason, Americans don't believe it. They just don't believe. But I remember just being young. I'm just going to say my own opinion when I was young. And I'm being very honest. When I was young, I assumed everybody in the UK had money. I didn't think nobody broke. I had to become an adult to find that out. But it's the perception, and the perception here is we're bums. So, when you talk about rap and all of that, and that's where what rap stems from, the struggle.
But that's by design.
But see, we hear, us guys here in the United States, honestly, and I think a lot of young, people like myself at the time believed that you guys had it made over there. So what are you rapping about? What are you talking about, bro?
Jazz,
what?
What
you know what I mean?
In America, what do they show us?
Comparison.
Yeah, Donald, sorry, what you're saying?
No, I was saying when we watch about England on TV living in America, they show us the Queen.
The pavements are made with gold. Come over.
Right. So
we don't see where people
we're not seeing Brixton. We're not seeing the slum communities.
Yeah.
For instance, I remember we did a tour in the early '90s of Australia. It was Public Enemy, Ice-T, and me. Mm-hmm. So when you look on TV, you see Australia. They show you the pretty side of Sydney and
that's like everything the media, isn't it?
Koala bears, kangaroos, and all that.
Right. But when we got there, guess what? When we went into the community of the Aborigines, it was worse than living in the South Bronx, yo. Yeah. I videotaped their communities, and I was shocked that because I always saw the pretty side of Australia. And I was like, it's like that here because it was never presented on TV or CNN. So I noticed every place I travel, I have seen the slums of all of these different places.
And you've been to the UK many times to know it's not like that.
In one place you ain't gonna see no slums because I know. And in all honesty, everybody.
I didn't see it in Dubai.
No, in Japan either. Everybody pretty much.
Even in Dubai.
Yeah, they got slums probably.
They have.
Everywhere. It's just like wherever there's rich in the world, there's poor. Trust me. You can't get rich without there being poor somewhere.
Yeah, but it's not even just that. In order to service the rich, they will have the quarters for the workers to come and support their
Yeah.
lifestyle. So
Yeah, of
even in
course.
Dubai, if you go to the old city, you're going to find the Indians, the Philippines, and it looks like a slum. You know, but they don't show that. And just going back to one aspect of it, I mean, our fathers, you know, we were our fathers and about 2 women, the Mangrove 9, they went through one of the biggest court cases ever, and yet hardly, well,
Anywhere in the
from
world.
that era, you didn't hear about it because what happens in England? Yeah, but what happens in England is that she's very good, Her Majesty's service, in suppressing. It could be 1,000 years of our contribution, and it is in England. Up to now, we don't even know that we were around in the 15th century, the 8th century, when the Moors came over and brought all their, you know, their sanitation, you know, they brought their mathematics, they brought, you know, everything that they brought in order to kind of galvanize Europe into what it is today, Industrial Revolution and all the rest of it. But you will never know that in the history books. And it's the same like the American history. You know, after 1700s, I mean, when you know you had a proclamation and you know you got your independence, everything about black contribution was suppressed. The only thing you heard about was slaves. You didn't hear what they contributed. Even down to Kentucky Fried Chicken is not even.
That's what they want to glorify.
The owner of that is not even.
Mainstream always want to glorify the subservient, like the black, you know, the black man, black woman being subservient, not in any way an authority of whether it be the arts, mathematics, or whatever. Like, you know, our inventors, our black inventors, even in this country, rarely were ever spoken about in public school. I don't know about private school, but definitely not in public school.
I used to question
it's not going to be in private school. It's not going to be
Yeah, and then you get in
school.
trouble when you question it all the time.
I used to question the history class.
I didn't start learning about real black history, and I'm being very completely honest, until I got to college. High school, I didn't know. It was like, you know, we was all fed this whole thing about Christopher Columbus and all. Man, look, there was, you know, many Native Americans, Africans, in you know, in North America, way before Christopher Columbus in 92 or whatever they claim he just.
When every island started to get names. I found you. Like, you're the West Indies.
See,
I found you. Or something.
That's just like any. That's the way you perpetuate, you know, a certain type of history. That's why they call it his story.
Yeah, exactly.
His story.
Their story.
They need to tell you.
Not our story. His story. You know, and I thought that was very profound when someone told me that years ago, when I was a young man in my early 20s, probably about your age, Matu, right?
Matulu.
Here I am, a black man, a young black man, 19 years old, and I'm saying to myself, we actually got an in-depth history that they have a class for it? That's how bizarre it was. I'm a 19-year-old man, and I'm going to a school, you know, criminal justice school. I went to John Jay, Criminal Justice College, but I didn't even know that was on the curriculum. I was just like, black. That just goes to my point of how, like Miss Jamila was saying that things were suppressed. They're still being suppressed.
Yeah, sorry, Donald, because you was saying something. You was
Right. No, I was just saying, when I was in high school, I used to question my teacher, history teacher, because they never told us about black history. It was always about American history that pertained to white.
Just kind of taking it back again, bringing us back into the whole thing about the hip hop, whether it's universal or you know, in the Bronx, and we are going to cover part 2 of the UK. So it's good to hear you guys' side of where you felt it was coming from the Bronx, and how you thought it evolved, or should I say the transition of how it went from, you know, the streets, the communities, to the mainstream, into the clubs and everything. So my question for you guys is, you know, where do you see, I mean, it's like with the younger generation, you like, so Matulu said, you know, they're collaborating, they're doing their thing. And I suppose for the younger generation, that's the way they see hip hop. And not for all, because there's a lot of younger artists who are kind of into the old school and the conscious lyrics, using the old beats. And it feels like they're kind of going back that way slightly again. Where do you see that the younger ones now will ever come back? I think social media has a lot to do with it personally, in the way people are kind of seeing all these images so much, whereas before we didn't have the social media to see everything that's going on, you know, that to hand that we can, you know, brainwash. Some people can get famous and be rappers, and they're not even rappers. They just they're good at doing their hits and everything on YouTube or, you know, on social media. Where do you see this going? The danger of it, or is it we just leave them and say, you know what, that's what the younger generation are about? What is your opinion?
But see, here's the thing, rap, and the reason it's such a dominant, you know, a dominant force in the industry is because just about anyone that has, you know, something relevant to say could actually, if they have the nerve, can get up there and do it. But it's what the message you're trying to convey and get out there, because a lot of people are following, and especially, you know, if you're one of the ones that seems to generate, you know, a following. So then it becomes, you know, it can go from easily something that could be, you know, great, to something that could just go really horribly wrong if the message is not there. Because if you see, if you can send a young mind down a destructive path very easily as an artist.
But do you feel also, Donald, as elders? Okay, so we're saying that they're all going this way, and we're saying that they can go the wrong way, and the social media is kind of taking over, depending on how popular someone is. But do you think we are doing enough as the elders, and I'm talking about the old school hip hop artists, to guide them? Because, you know, where did they go wrong? How did they go wrong? What happened? You know, we were the old school and we were doing whatever, and then somehow it just went blah, 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 and it's gone to a different level. So could you say that we have some kind of responsibility to that, because we let it get to a certain level, and then what happened? What, you know, where did it go wrong to even change to go down those different directions? Because we've got to take some responsibility somewhere along the line.
I know where it
went wrong. From what I seen, it was the corporate takeover.
Thank you.
The corporations took everything, and they kicked all the elders to the left. Because you have to understand something also, in hip hop, they put an age limit.
Yeah, what I always do.
So and that put all the elders out of the game. Like, you cannot tell me when you have an artist as great as Melly Mel, cannot continue to make great music, be on the radio and tour. They don't do that to the rock legends.
Yeah, or reggae.
Rock legends still, Rolling Stone and them still lives on and make music. Aerosmith and all these, they still, and this generation follows them.
Yeah.
It's not only the old generation that like Aerosmith, this generation likes him. But in hip hop, especially in the Black community, they feel that, well, if your music is not on the radio, if your video is not on MTV or wherever,
you're not getting certain hits.
You're not in the game. You're not successful. Now, the majority of the rappers are doing the same music to me today.
Yeah.
Do I blame them? No, because I can understand it. Where are most of these rappers from? They're not growing up in rich communities. They are part of the struggle too. So they're looking at if this is a way that they can make a lot of money to get their families out of the slums, you're gonna do it. How can you hate on a Black man making money or a Black woman? But I just think in hip hop, they need a balance. They need to balance it out. Like, well, you can have your conscious rap, you can have the ones that do comedy, you can have the party, that all of it get played on the same platform. Not just that doing conscious is buried under the underground. Because you may have an artist like her. She's an incredible artist. She made the song I Can't Breathe. I love it. But is it a big hit worldwide? They don't want to play that kind of music.
That's a
you
great
take what's
song.
the artist's name? The young brother, Kedron Bryant, the I Just Want to Live song. That song should have been
I Just Want to Live
worldwide.
Yeah.
It should have been the #1 song that everybody needs to hear of that message in the music, especially the white people, because this is what we're going through and living through. But the mainstream is not going to still accept that. So as elders, most of the elders has completely disappeared because one, they feel that if they're not irrelevant, they're wasting their time. They have families now. They're not in the struggle. Me, I had never left hip hop. And it's always stayed in me. I had always knew how to move. I never was one to like go back and say, okay, well, I did this. I should get booked because of my own music. No, I was like, I need to do new music. And I love collaborating with artists all over the world, new artists, because I always looked at it like I was a new artist at one time.
Yeah.
For a chance. So why am I not want to collaborate? Because I always look at it, each one reach one to teach one. So with my knowledge, like if they want to book me to come to a country and teach hip hop history, I'm gonna go because a lot of these kids don't know. The old school can start with 50 Cent, Travis
Funny
Scott.
you say that because our part of our what we're doing as
Trying to do that
is trying to, well, as we've got the panel now, you've got Matulu, who's the younger generation, having the audience, allowing. So we're kind of like the platform to
Right.
or the bridge to you all, so that you can then converse with the younger ones. They can ask you questions and they can even just understand the history that they may not even known, been aware of. And then on top of that, not just understanding it and learning it, but how can you help them and monitoring that help? It's not just here's my email and shout me, okay. That doesn't mean much in one.
I was coming over, they were bringing me to Manchester and in Leeds, and I was teaching the early days of the hip hop history, and these kids was loving it because they had no clue who Sha-rock was, who Lisa Lee was, who were the early ones that did it out in the parks to where this became a billion-dollar industry. So when they see that, they love it. And there's been a lot of countries that brought me there to teach the kids, and I love telling the stories because this is something that needs to be heard because the mainstream is not going to teach you about the Kool Herc and what he done. They're not going to teach you that.
You can't teach somebody something that you weren't present and you don't know nothing about.
Yeah, it's true. Grassroots level
is never the same as the first-hand account. I don't care how you sum it up. It's like, your parents were freedom fighters for the
Mangrove 9.
See, your parents were able to express themselves and talk about the facts, not what some guy read and he got from so and so and about the Mangrove 9. Your parents understood the intensity of what transpired during that period and what they were fighting for. So,
but no one else did behind the at that time. No one else did. 50 years later, Jimmie, they get their recognition 50 years later. So it took that long.
But you know what? Thankfully, they're being recognized for their, sacrifices and the accomplishments they made to enlighten, the folks out there of the travesties and the atrocities and the different things that were happening in that period. But you know what? To hear it from them, that's piercing. That's not hearing it from some guy who wants to be whatever he, writer thinks he knows.
He does research and then starts looking, reading it up and then starts quoting things, and you're like, really?
I'm one of them people. I'm one of those kind of people that I would, if you're gonna express something about any sort of history, I want to know in some way that you had
you've lived it.
Yeah, first-hand knowledge of it.
Keeping it real, isn't it?
The easiest thing for us going forward is to, explore with enthusiasm our history. Now that there's an awakening, there's an appetite for it, which has been suppressed for so long. It's just making sure that we are all networking together, because that's the only way you're going to do it. I mean, the only way our parents won the case is because at that point they were unified. you know, and not only just intellectual, you know, intelligence, and other groups that were around the world, whether it be South Africa and their apartheid at that time, and, you know, various other groups, African groups as well. So unless you unify, it's like having, you know, a federal Caribbean or federal Africa. Unless you unify and you bring in-house your trading, you know, your information, you know, and you value it and you store it, and you have you know, like I don't know, you know, you archive and you own your own history.
Yeah, and you educate the children yourself. Everyone always waits for someone else to do it, the job. It's like, why are they not teaching us at school? Why are they not? Am I not learning this? Because they're not going to, right?
Well,
they never will. You need to educate yourself, and then if you can't educate, you have to find a way to educate the youth yourself.
But the point is also why are we expecting them to pay us to educate us? They're another culture. They're English or Europeans or whatever.
And you're in England as far as they're concerned.
Yeah, you're in our country, and we are going to sort ourselves out first. If your career have to learn from obviously
the blacks don't do that. The blacks don't look out for your own people.
No,
everyone is separated.
No, but
once you get money,
it's called programming.
We're taught not to. It's not that we can't do it
since the beginning.
Yeah.
Well, now we're made to change because we're going to try.
Hold on.
We're going to try. You don't want to hear that anymore. We're the Mangrove 9 Next Generation, and we are going to try. So by doing these shows that we're doing and having people like Donald D and yourself, Jimmie, on our shows, and the rest of the people that we've been bringing in onto the shows,
this is such a great
about how high they were. Some people are Joe Blogs who are just doing an average day job, and we bring them on the show because they've lived and they've got experience and they can educate just as much as someone who's highly profiled. So this is why we've got you guys on the show, in a sense that we want to be able to educate the younger generation. And if it means trying to do it this way and bringing them on the show with us, like we've got Matulu who comes in and listens to the shows, and we've had other topics, not just about hip hop, on various subjects of just, you know, survival and education. And these kids, they're hungry. Like Matulu would tell you, I remember first meeting Matulu on one of the other, on another, everything seems to be online now because of obviously COVID, but he blew me away. He blew me away with telling me how he's, you know, starved, and he's trying to find these things about Black history. He's trying to find his way about his history, and there was nothing there for him to find. So he's hungry. So there's a lot of kids out there who are hungry for this education that needs to be provided. And it's just that they haven't got it. And they people like Matulu, they want, like what Jimmie said, the real thing. They don't want, the younger generation ain't as stupid as our generation.
There's been a lot mentioned and I've really been sucking in everything. But I'm 23, but sometimes I feel like I'm 40 inside here. You know, I look at the elders a lot. Do you get what I'm saying? And I really just kind of identify and resonate with the experience they had. And that's in all outlets. With the music, I'm heavily inspired by 90s, early 2000s, to get me. Because as we mentioned, that was like the end of the conscious era rap. Do you get what I'm saying? We saw the end of it around those times. Tupac is the reason why I even made poetry, which then segued into being music. Do you get what I'm saying? His political, especially early Tupac. Do you get what I'm saying? When he was a lot more political, pre-death row. Do you get what I'm saying? But nonetheless, for today's music in UK and US, it's frivolity is celebrated. Do you get what I'm saying? Being lit, party. Do you get what I'm saying? Like just your social status is also very synonymous with your music. Do you get what I'm saying? Yeah. Social media. If you're big on social media, if you look the part, if you're drippy, if you're wearing the design, etc., then people they're gonna listen to you. You have people's ears. Do you get what I'm saying? All you need to do is have a catchy hook, have a good beat, which we've mentioned is very easy to make now, and that's it. That's the recipe. But as Yinka said, people are hungry. Do you get what I'm saying? My music, it's very political. Right now, I'm in the recording phase. I've written a lot of content, but I'm not actually recording it and starting to make visuals for it. And I would say for the elders to support that, conscious artists that are underneath the mat, the most they can do is push it out there, you know, because as Brother Jazz said, we're conditioned to just listen to nonsense. Do you get what I'm saying? And we normalize it. We think this is what it is. And then that creates this herd mentality of more sheep following. Do you get what I'm saying? And you get more sheep creating the same music. Everybody sounds the same. As D said, do you get what I'm saying? So people have lost their individuality and we need that authenticity. But also we haven't We need to, individually, people need to look inside of themselves and understand who they are. And then from that, once you know who you are, you can look in the mirror, understand who you are. Your music is always going to sound different because you're fully putting yourself and you're not just looking to the next man. Do you get what I'm saying? So I feel like that's the best way to support, to repair that distorted fashion that's been created, you know? I feel like we need to push those artists that are really sending the right message because the industry wants us to make nonsense. Do you get me? They celebrate that and they make the money off it and they trick us as we follow it, as we go into the label. But we're bigger than the industry. Right. We're a whole nation, so we need to encourage our people.
On that consciousness, like once there was about peace, love, unity in the hip hop community. That's long gone now. Because I you know, I sit back and I'll be like, okay, a lot of today's rappers are very successful. They're making moves, you know, they don't. But then I look at it and I say, how come so many of them are getting killed? It seems like every week I'm reading another rapper got shot dead. And this is this generation of artists. And I said, even when in our generation, if artists had beef, LLs beefing with KoolMoeDee, there was no violence, no competition.
They had the beef on the records. It never even got physical, rarely. I mean, it shifted in the 90s, of course, but I remember those days. I'm gonna sit down, I'm gonna write the best rap ever, and I'm gonna come out, and you're gonna outdo this person, but it was all about the skill level. Killing someone, no, it was just about, I'm gonna kill you with...
You lit my microphone.
Yeah, with the knowledge, the profoundness of what I got up here. Yeah, the origins of hip hop, and Donald touched on it. It was about peace, unity, and love. That's the origins of hip hop. And it's never expressed or conveyed or taught to the young artists coming up because maybe it would resonate in some way or fashion to them. And they may say to themselves, you know what? Maybe I need to add some of this in my music as opposed to whatever it is. The label is trying to dictate them to put out there.
These artists don't have elders to help direct them. There's no elders to help you. Like if you look at a basketball, like say a basketball team, professional team, you have young guys come in on the team, but you have veterans there to teach them, to you know, to nourish them. You know, in today's artists, there are no elders because the industry has got rid of all the elders that still are relevant and still making music.
You know why? Because we're the positive. We come from the era of positive, the information and everything that was good about hip hop. That's where we come from. So we have to be exiled, eliminated, pushed to the side, or however you want to.
Don't you think they've done that anyway? With regards to children can sue their parents, you know, it's like they'll help you get rid of your parents as well.
Matulu. So I want to ask Brother Matulu, who influenced you on your writing and music?
Oh man,
you mentioned the 90s.
Yeah. For me, it's so funny because once upon a time I really suppressed the idea of making music because what I was surrounded by was the same thing. And at this point, I didn't have anything to say. So I knew if I was ever to make music, I would just sound like this guy here. Do you get what I'm saying? Yeah. It was everyone sounded the same. So making music didn't entice me, although listening to music was a big part of it. Do you get what I'm saying? And then it wasn't until my undying desire to do poetry just emerged. Do you get what I'm saying? And then I started doing poetry, and I mentioned, it was Tupac. It was Tupac that really got me in tune with my poetic side, you know. And then from poetry, you know, it's poetry's the cousin of rap, you know. So you get what I'm saying? So rhythm and poetry, and you know, I found myself going in there because I was doing more so spoken rap. It was poetry, but it also had little flows and cadence in it that could be put on a beat. And then ultimately, I just basically transformed it into songs, and then I organically just found myself writing music. So I would say a lot of it heavily was Tupac, but in terms of my sound, I would say as of recent now, it's Pat, J. Cole, and Lauryn Hill. Lauryn Hill is that soulful essence. That's why I was very intrigued with the conversation that was going on about her. Do you get what I'm saying? Like Lauryn Hill, she was like brother Jazz said, like she was like the last person, females,
right.
to make it through,
the
you know,
content.
at such a grand level. And it's very interesting to look at, and you're like, wow, she actually done it, you know. But then of course they tried to ruin her later. Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's how it always.
You know what?
that's
I
how it
wish
goes.
I wish you could have met Pac. Pac was a good friend of mine. I met Pac, and it's crazy how me and him met. We met in Detroit. We got stuck in the elevator. You know, we're in a hotel, and we're on the Public Enemy tour. At this time, he's the dancer in Digital Underground.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're in the elevator, but you know, the elevator is overcrowded of people. And it gets stuck. We're like just not moving. And me and him was in there, and he asked me, he's like, yo, you Donald D. Rhyme Syndicate, right? And I'm like, yeah, you popped down with Digital, right? And we bonded from that moment. And I remember, so we would be on the tours and we would just communicate. And then I remember in '92 when I started making my second album, Let the Horns Blow. And I gave Pop a copy of it, and he was like, man, I loved it. And he was like, man, Let the Horns Blow. He used to always be going, because that's how it started. He loved it so much. You go back to his, it's a Dear Mama song.
Yeah.
Start off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He loved my Let the Horns Blow because he loved it so much. And I was telling Pac, so when I was having my album release party, I was like, yo, Pac, because he was like, yo, I'm gonna show up to the album release. I said, man, I told him, you big time now, because he had already did Juice, and he was like really big now. Pac showed up, and we hung out, and we had a good time. And we were supposed to go in and work together. We were supposed to redo How Do You Want It Part 2, which I never got to record with John Jones, who produced the original. And then the last I spoke to Pac, I was on the set of the Toss It Up video. At this time, I didn't have a record deal because we had lost our record deals up at Warner. This is off the whole cop killer thing that happened with Ice-T. So Warner Brothers dropped their whole rap division. Big Daddy Kane lost his deal, Bismarck. Basically, everybody that was on the label got dropped. So when I went on the set and was watching Pac film the Toss It Up video, we sat and talked. He was like, you need to come sign with Death Row. But I'm like hearing all of these crazy stories about Death Row. I already Suge was treating people, because I had already talked to Sam Snead that was on the label. Then the thing with Dre had happened. So I remember Pac telling me like, yo, but he was planning to leave to go do his own Thug Life label. So I'm telling him, you asking me to come join Death Row.
I thought I would love this. No?
I said, it doesn't equal up. So basically, we decided not to go to Vegas to the fight because Mike Tyson was our boy too. And we were planning to go to the fight, and we didn't go. So while us not going to Vegas, I never saw Pac again because the last time was at that Toss It Up video was the last time I saw Pac.
That's crazy, man. Hey, D, I'll tell you right now, bro, it is an honor to meet someone you've even met back in the flesh. Do you get what I'm saying? Like, just that connection is divine intervention in its own. Do you get what I'm saying? Car for me, he's like, obviously, there's a lot of conscious rappers, but with Pac, why I identify with him so much? I identify with his spirit so much because his music, you hear his soul, you hear the passion. Do you get what I'm saying? Like, you know how people always put Biggie and Pac in the same conversation. Do you get what I'm saying? And they always compare. Shouts out to Biggie with his lyricism. Do you get what I'm saying? Like, Biggie's always there when it comes to the lyrical content and the cadence, but Tupac, he never failed to evoke emotion with Biggie. Do you get what I'm saying? And that's the exact same traits.
I was at the party the night Biggie got killed. Me and Africa Islam was there.
Wow.
The night Biggie got shot. But yeah, Pac was ahead of his time, man. Come on, Shed So Many Tears is one of my favorite songs.
Yeah, man.
But before we even get to that part, I have to pay homage to Tupac's mum. And obviously it was father, but his mother. So the way he was educated through the activism, through the struggle, what he witnessed very early on in life formulated a lot of his mindset, his conversation, his lyricism, all of that. So again, it's through Yeah, it's through how we educate. It's going right back to what we're saying in the beginning of this conversation. How you learn, educate, and then transfer that information is what's important to
How
us
you
now.
channel it as well.
And how you
Yeah.
channel it.
My
So-
daughter loves this. When all this, my daughter's just like Matuli, and she loves Tupac. I mean, the younger generation who are kind of into the older generation, I think a lot of them relate to Tupac.
Because I feel like Tupac done something very special. It was a self-fulfilled prophecy, you know. He immortalized himself through his music and you know his films. He says it in his lyrics. When you really listen to him, he wanted to live on through his music, and obviously he wasn't here to see it. But do you get what I'm saying? Like he still lives on, and this is 25 years on, and he's still relevant. Do you get what I'm saying? It says a lot. It really says a lot about his purpose here on earth. You know, it tends to be the ones who have a very short life that are very impactful.
Very short life and
with Pac,
lifestyle.
Pac had those two sides. He had that side that you're talking about where he wrote those conscious things, but then that thug life side overshadowed.
Yeah, get himself into trouble.
I would see Pac so calm, like embracing people, talking positive stuff. But then I saw Pac wild out sometimes. We would be in the club. I remember one night we was in the club, me, Ice-T, there was that rapper, her name is The Boss.
Yeah.
I remember.
We were at a club in LA and there was a shooting. Pac wild out, ran outside, got his gun, shooting Ice-T, telling him to put the gun away. They're gonna think you have something. And I was like, man. So I saw both sides of how Pac was, but the positive side, man, outshadows that thug life side, man. His writing was incredible.
But then also that's what made him the thug lifestyle, because he's surviving. We're all surviving. We're not living, we're surviving.
Yeah.
Exactly,
so, You know,
I was gonna say that flip side of him it adds to the beautiful complication of him. Do you get what I'm saying? Like we all have that side of us. We all have that.
But let me ask you a question. When did that side of him come into focus?
Yeah,
100% with the death row thing. You get what I'm saying? Like when he came out of prison and he joined death row, because that's when he was just being elevated more within the public eye. You know, he's been televised a lot more. He'd been shot. You know, things were already happening to him. There was a lot of things that were happening which seemed to, you know, make him take on this character even more. Do you get what I'm saying? And
sometimes you become a product of your environment.
Yeah.
Because I look at it how I rapped in New York compared to when I got to LA, with some of the songs I recorded, kind of was influenced by the sound of what the West Coast rappers was doing, or some of the gangster style songs that I put on some of my albums. So you kind of can follow what was going on or the scene around you, because when I looked at what did Ice-T rap about? And you kind of could get influenced by some of the people that you're a part of.
Yeah.
So, because I remember some of my family be like, well, you weren't rapping like this when you rapped in New York. You know, I was at party having fun. So that was a big issue for me. When I made my second album, I went back to the Bronx and recorded at Jazzy Jay studio, because I wanted to get back into that culture of being back home in New York, and then bring in some of my artists, my friends that I either groomed or grow with, like Peter Guns, who's on my second album. He was a guy that I was teaching how to rap as some of the other artists that was in my community in the Bronx. So, you know, to each his own, you live and learn.
Definitely gonna have to come back and get you all back at some point, and you know,
have a discussion.
Yeah. It's not going to happen in an hour.
You got to get some of the early sisters on this.
Yeah.
Bring in some of the early sisters. I can reach out to them. I think Sha-rock would be a good sister. You got
Donald could get anybody. Everybody loves Donald.
Yeah.
Everybody loves
We're
Donald.
definitely having some females, you know, from the old school.
Everybody loves Donald, hates me, so.
Is it? Okay. Well, we don't know what you was up to then.
I'm the Tupac DJ.
You're the player, all right.
I'm the Tupac of DJs.
I can link you in with some of them. Because I want to say this too, because I want to produce a project with some of the early women of hip hop that didn't really get the shine, you know, because of the industry, injustice, or some that never even made recordings. I want to get them.
Because it's shifted. Once it's
you're going to hear it on the air as well. Donald D asked me if I would go and do jump on the track
Yeah.
with them. So that would be history in
You
itself
should.
if we pull that off.
That would be
Oh, right.
awesome.
But yeah, I'd love to do
And
that.
I would like to collaborate with brother Matulu.
Lulu, yeah.
That's why I was
I'll
gonna
jump
say
on
that
some
too.
stuff.
Jump in, man.
I produce beats. I'll
Yeah.
give you
And this is
some
what the show is
throwback from
about.
the
It's
90s.
about connection. This is what we do. We try to put on the show.
Network.
So we
We
can bring people
network
on.
here.
They can
You
Yeah.
we put together something nice, man, because and the way you speak and you know your philosophy, and I see where your head is at, Brother Matul, you can go far.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
not only, you know, will you be able to inspire, you have like, you know, what it takes, you know what I'm saying, your maturity level.
Exactly.
Mhm.
For me, the way you blow me away, and
Yeah.
I'm an elder, yeah, and people are thinking that about someone like Tupac. The way you talk and the way you blow me away as an elder, you could be as big as Tupac, and you could
Yeah,
start
'cause
that
you're
trend.
only
You could
23.
start that trend
Yeah.
of what Tupac was, and I'm telling you, yeah, you heard it on
They
this.
were only yeah.
Heard it on
No,
this.
If you
blew
all
me
you
away
have to
the first time I
do
spoke to you.
is just take and don't let and whatever you do, Brother Matula, don't let anyone steer you this way.
Wait,
that
defocus
way.
you. Nope. It
You
ain't gonna happen.
keep what you got here and apply it to the pen and paper
Yeah.
and put it down and make sure it comes from here.
You're way ahead of
Man, you guys are in the phase of my life where I'm writing. I'm working on my first music video
that's
right
even
now.
better.
I basically, you get me? I'm immersing myself within the world right now. But I've got content there, two songs I can send. I would love to connect with you, man. And
Yeah.
in terms of the Tupac
Okay.
thing, man, there will only be one pack. You get me? And I can only take pages
No,
out of
but
his
you know what
book,
I'm saying? I'm talking about you're going to be
100%.
Matulu. You're going to be
Yeah, yeah,
Matulu in your time. But what
Look,
I'm
my
trying to
name
say
even.
is you
My name is
you
inspired by
inspire
his My name even is inspired by his stepdad. Do you get what I'm saying? Matulu Shakur. But even in Matulu Shakur's own respect as well, you know, Black Liberation Army leader and what he done and how he's in jail now for the, you know, what they tried to say about him. But even just, there's so much, not even just Pat, but his background as well. There's so much that has influenced me. Do you get what I'm saying? But 100% what brother Jazz was telling me, man, like, that's something I feel like youth need to really work on, you know, just inside here and applying that to whatever your outlet is and not letting the outside world.
Don't let them
Discourage you.
Don't let
look at what's around you and then realize why you behave or do things in a certain way. You have to really check what is surrounding you, what are your surroundings, what's your environment, as to why you behave. Would you behave differently in a different environment? If you know, so you got to really check that who you are, and if you behave in a certain kind of way, you're doing things that you just don't feel right inside. Just check your environment of what you're living around.
But equally important, and I just say this generally, you know, how we eat, how we sleep, how we, what kind of food we physically ingest or mentally or intellectually ingest also. And the other thing is, and I've always said this, so as my parents, be around like-minded people with the right energy. Because if you haven't got that, you're either on your own and it's going to be harder, or you're going to get distracted and defocus and you're going to go another way.
Everything happens for a reason. And I'm a true believer of that you cross people's paths for a reason. Everything that happens in life is for a reason. So we've all crossed paths, whether it was on Facebook or wherever, when I crossed paths with Jimmie and things like that. And then Jimmie's introduced me to Donald. It's for a reason. Yeah. Everything happens for a reason. So now I just think this is beautiful that we're on this, you know, this show with Donald D,
platform,
Jimmie Jazz Jones, historic in hip hop.
Jimmie.
And you understand what I'm saying?
Both of them. Yeah,
Right.
100%, man, 100%.
And you've come out and you can speak on behalf as well for the youngers who are viewing, who are watching the show, you know, to show them things like this. And you're speaking as a youngster. There are people out there like you. Trust me. So you're a good role model in a sense. And this whole show, it's brilliant. It inspires me so much to do more and more shows to know that we can make this happen. And all it is, you don't have to have big money and big funding to be able to do this, to reach out to the younger generation. And we're showing people that you don't need to do that. So stop using that as an excuse and stop using funding as an excuse, or we haven't got money, because that's all bull as far as I'm concerned.
Right.
Look how we're doing.
We have
got big budget production, but we're connected. If you're feeling that's the right thing, if people start offering you, so I'm just saying as experience from when I was in the industry, where sometimes it looks like the painting looks beautiful on that side, and you don't always jump to it. Yeah, go with this gut feeling, because I made many mistakes of thinking that something's green on the other side, and my gut instincts would be telling me sometimes, no, don't make that decision, and then you cross it, and then you might regret it. But it's part of life, you know. It's to me, anything I do wrong in life, I've learned from it. Yeah.
Because a matter of fact, I got a request. They want to bring me whenever to Manchester to start teaching hip hop again in the schools there. Because a friend of mine, I don't know if y'all know the artist named Red Venom. He's kind of with him. I got videos with him on YouTube. I'll send you all the links of what the stuff I did with him. So he just got where they want him to start teaching the hip hop history in the schools, and he was the one that connected me to do it before there in Manchester.
So for any youngins that are tuning in, my generation or below me, you lot watch Hip Hop Evolution, because a lot of the names that the brothers were mentioning here, I'm only familiar with because of that show. It's on Netflix, and it really sets the tone, and it shows you how hip hop started. Hip Hop Evolution. It's on Netflix. Couple episodes still.
We could go on for days with that, but that's another episode. That's a whole episode for that.
All on social media as the names of that's on here. Matulu, the name on your social media.
Oh yeah.
We can connect you as well, Donald. Anyway, so we can just transfer details and everything. Yeah, everyone's details. That's what we do as well.
We've got all the information.
We've created like a little database for networking. So everyone we have on our shows, we try to connect them with the younger generation and things like that if they want to reach out. So as long as you lot are all right with that, Jimmie and Donald, that's the kind of things we do. So hopefully
you've been on my timeline for years.
Yeah, I'm talking about the younger, the ones.
Listen, I'm going to keep it real. Listen, you lot don't go into another conversation, because listen, my acting saltfish and my dumplings are right.
Right, so we just want to say a big thank you to Donald D. It was a privilege to have you on the show. A big thank you to Jimmie Jazz Jones. A privilege and such a deep conversation. Matulu, as always, keep the way you are, man.
Keeping it real, man.
Always a privilege to have you on. Jamila, my sister. You know, always the same, two peas in a pod. And so just want to say a big thank you, and make sure you tune into the rest of the shows that we do, the other episodes, because they're always going to be.
I will check them out.
Grassroots on the level. Okay, and thank you for the support. Remember to subscribe and like to our channels. And I just want to say a big thank you to everybody. And see you on the other side.
Peace.
Take care.
Peace.
Bye.
One love, man.
Bye.
So I'd like to say a big thank you once again to Jimmie Jazz Jones. And we're going to take you to Graffitti Rock. Jimmie Jazz Jones in the house.
It's gonna give you a shot. If you've never seen a breaker do a head spin, just check out this. And if you've never seen a DJ scratch a record on beat, just check out this. So bring your hat, just stage, just tight as their jeans, cause we're gonna rock the Graffitti Rock scene. Action!
It's Graffitti Rock, and there's no special guest. Every corner on a shot it. At the Grandmaster's by DMC, also featuring DJ Whipping, Jimmie Jazz, and the Graffitti Rock rappers from the Church McLyte, SpecialK.
We also want to say a big thank you to Donald D. from the Rhyme Syndicate, the B-Boys, and African Islam.
When I say hey, you say ho, hey, hey, live show party, yo. If you love hip hop, put your hands up. When I say hey, you say ho, hey, hey, yo. Everything I drop is automatic, certified hot, genuine hip hop. It moves like stocks on Wall Street. Ain't no MC hotter than me, man. Forget the sound scan, forget that your label gave you them grands. I be at your show, take the mic from your hand and serve you right in front of your fans. No, I don't play the okie doke. Yo, you can take a toke from your smoke. No, I'm not a washed rapper that's broke. Yo, like Rakim, Donald D ain't no joke. My history's proof that I spit the truth. Since writing my first rhyme on the Bronx stoop. Understand I'm a legend, dude, and the Bronx Syndicate, that's the new group. Live show party, yo, if you love hip hop, put your hands up. When I say hey, you say ho, hey, hey. Live show party, yo, if you love hip hop, put your hands up. When I say hey, you say ho, hey, hey. I wanna rock right now. I'm Donald D and I came to get down. I'ma show you clowns how to spark up a party and make them hotties freak that body. B-boys, I wanna see y'all breaking. Let's go to work. Come on, clap your hands, everybody, and everybody clap your hands. People on the left, clap your hands. To the people on the right, clap your hands. Let me hear you say ho. Say ho, 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 ho. Let's go.